He knew exactly what Virgin were. They were a disruptor. They were innovative. They thought differently. So he lived his life as a personification of that brand.
So much in the book. So much in the book. We're sitting here in Virgin Radio, Richard Branson, Virgin. I wanted to work for Richard Branson all the way through my teenage years because of these legendary Christmas parties the Virgin brand had. For the fact that he famously, his blue slide was this boat in Little Venice because the Virgin headquarters were a houseboat. It was just cool. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
I mean, that's what I met Richard about 6 months ago. And if you think about Richard's story, in order to promote the brand that is Virgin, he did useless and absurd things. Yeah. He took these hot air balloons and drifted them across the ocean. And the story became even better when he nearly died. And all of that bizarre, extreme
personification, isn't it?
It fed into what Virgin meant. And it's the same thing. That blue slide fed into what my company meant, and that's what it's just a different frame to think through when you're building your business. That the most absurd thing you do will say the most about you and do most of the marketing work. There is nothing that a marketing or CMO person at Virgin could have done that was more beneficial than Richard doing those extreme stunts.
Yeah.
And Red Bull, another prime example, throwing people out of a spacecraft and free falling to the earth.
In space, yeah.
The most absurd thing you do says the most about you, and it's a different frame to build brands around. CFOs won't typically let you do that because they will want an ROI, and so in the blue slide analogy, they'll want to know how they're going to make £14,000 return on investment. They'll want to know how that £13,000 slide will make £14,000 in cash.
Yeah.
Founders who are so entrenched in the brand's values will do this kind of thing fluently, which is exactly what Richard did. He knew exactly what Virgin were. They were a disruptor. They were innovative. They thought differently. So he lived his life as a personification of that brand.
And within there, from a shareholding point of view, lies risk and therefore growth. Because you have growth companies and you have value companies. And the value companies are glacial, but they're pretty firm and solid. Not always, but they're the safer bet, if you like. But they're the least exciting and the least exponential. Mm-hmm. Speaking about Red Bull there. To be at Red Bull yesterday was really interesting. So I'll talk about it more tomorrow on the show. But to be there yesterday was really interesting because every Tuesday after a Grand Prix, they have a debrief.
Right.
And they have a big theatre at the Red Bull factory. Have you ever been?
No.
You'd love it. You'd love it and they'd love you. And you should go and speak there. It's great.
I'd love to.
I sort of accidentally ended up speaking in front of 1,200 people yesterday. It was hilarious for so many different reasons. I was there for my son's work experience. I was waiting in the car park. And Christian Horner, who I know, said, do you want to come to the debrief? I went, yes, please. So 1,200 people, the whole factory stops, 1,200 people go into the theatre. Christian starts a proper, serious post-Formula One race debrief with the head strategist, questions and answers from his workforce, and then any other business. And at the end of it, he said, Chris Evans is here. He's here he said, Chris, do you want to get up and say a few words? That's another story, right? And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a very unexpected, fantastic day out. But to be there was really interesting because they are currently, right now, at the top of their game. To be there 2 days after they've won another Grand Prix, they've won the first 13 out of 22 Grand Prix this year, and they'll probably win the other 9. Anything can happen, but they'll probably win all the races this year. But to be there in the middle of that, speaking to your disruption and the alchemy, which the ROIs can't explain. Mm-hmm. There's a department in sorry, I'm talking like it's your interview, but I think you might like it.
Yeah.
You just enthuse me. So there's this department they call the Heritage Department, which sounds like the past. No. They are the department who are given all the cars that are no longer needed for R&D or to win races. And Red Bull say, do what you want with them, just get us some publicity. So the last thing they did was they took the RB7, which was a Sebastian Vettel World Championship winning race car. This is 2 weeks ago. They took it to Australia and drove it as fast as they could on the sand in a desert, a Formula One car. How hilarious is that?
Yes, they did.
That's what you're talking about. That's the sort of stellar version of the blue slide, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And they're a brand that personifies it. If you go on their Instagram right now, what you will not see is their product. I challenge anyone to go on their Instagram and try and find their product. What you will see is them doing these absurd stunts. They are, in my view, in Richard Branson's footsteps. in his wake. They're copying his blueprint, and they're a real strong founder-led business. I believe they're still owned by the family, if I'm right.
100%.
And that's how it's possible, because they're entrenched in the founding values. The minute you appoint a CEO to run that company, and you get a couple of generations down the line of that, they'll lose their way, and they'll go back to return on investment. How much money is driving this fast car on sand in the desert going to make us? And that's the wrong frame to think through. It's a short-term frame, but it's not an enduring long-term absurd frame, which is what we need.